Okay, let's talk some more about our breaking news, the death of Ariel Castro. One of his attorneys says authorities denied their requests to have an independent psychologist evaluate him while he was in jail and prison. Well, we have psychiatrist Dr. John Sharp joining us on the phone right now. Dr. Sharp, thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Christy. You're welcome.
Thanks. What would they have been looking for specifically had they been able to evaluate him?
Well, any expressed suicidality, any signs of desperation, any kind of hidden behaviors that, would tip that he was, likely to end his life. You'd pretty much have to have him on one-to-one observation if they thought that was true. So if he did suicide and if he wanted to, it wouldn't have been easy to prevent over the long term.
How long would they have had to evaluate him to try to make that determination? How much time would they have to spend with him?
Well, just an hour or two. You remember when Jodi Arias was, feeling hopeless and suicidal, they evaluated her in jail, and she was deemed safe, and then apparently she was safe. So, it can be done in a few hours. But you know what? If you get a chance, I'd love to talk about closure, what the victims and what all of us can think about when we consider that this, evil man is now dead.
Yeah. Okay, I will. You're right. We do want to talk about the victims in just a moment. But on August 1st, let's talk about this real quickly. This was the last time we saw him, August 1st. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years. And the judge told him there was no place in the world for his brand of criminal. But what struck so many of us watching was that Castro was so defiant. Listen to this.
She got into my vehicle without even knowing what it was. I don't blame you. I'm not putting fault on her, but I'm just saying, I'm trying to make up a point across that I am not a violent predator that you're trying to make me look a monster. I'm not a monster.
He's basically saying, I'm not a monster, deflecting the blame almost onto them. And his cousin, who talked to CNN this morning, Dr. Sharp, had said, I find it hard to believe that after all he did, he mustered up the courage to take his own life. In your opinion, can somebody who is so defiant and will take no responsibility for their actions, are they able to shift into a mode where suddenly that overtakes them?
Oh, absolutely. And I disagree that it requires courage. I mean, in his case, I think it was a mark of his great weakness, of how flawed he was as a person. He couldn't even stand the BS that he was coming up with. He was clearly a monster. He was clearly blaming the victims. And I bet you that in his dark moments, he couldn't even stand that. And it was out of weakness that he took his own life, not strength.
Well, and the fact that he was by himself. He was under protective order and by himself, in, I believe, solitary for 23 hours a day.
When you're alone with the person you are, when you're alone with the person that he was, it clearly was too much for him. It clearly overwhelmed him. He couldn't stand it. That's actually a good thing. We can see that he couldn't stand the person that he was. That, in a way, can help with closure.
Yeah, well, when you talk about closure, the victims, we do know, we got word just a while ago that these three women are aware that he commits suicide. They will not be making a statement, but we also know they really wanted him to serve his life in prison. So
yes.
What would you say to those three?
Well, what I would say is that closure can be gained in a whole variety of ways, and it's really pretty much up to each of them, to all of us, in other words, to figure this out. They could get closure by knowing that they're safe, that they're free, that they have love and support and therapy and a future. That in and of itself could be their basis of closure. If they wanted to have closure because he was caught and convicted, that also happened. If they want to have closure because he is away from this world, that can happen too. It doesn't depend on him, rotting in jail forever. It can be the fact that he's dead. In some states he would have been condemned to death. So I think that even though we can't live knowing that he's alive and in jail and suffering, we can live knowing that he's dead, that he's not in this world, and that is the basis of closure. Absolutely.
All righty. Dr. John Sharp, we're so grateful that you were with us today to walk us through this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure. Take good care.